Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another video. Today, we're going to be talking about market trends and kind of just in general, like what to maybe expect when you're looking to buy a home here in Eastern Tennessee in 2026 based off of some year over year numbers. So I've really dug into the MLS, pulled a whole bunch of different numbers from different kind of situations to try to give you guys at least a general idea of sort of what the real estate market is doing here in Eastern Tennessee, because I talk to a lot of you guys, and that's typically the first question you have. So I figured, while I'm doing all this research to, gear up for the year, I might as well do a video on it. So today we're going to be basically just going through looking at some counties, looking at some lakes, and just like I said, giving you guys, some information so that you can see sort of what the real estate market is doing. We're also going to talk about a few other things. But anyways, let's get started. And I want to first kind of let you guys know sort of what I've done here. So as I've mentioned before in some of my other videos, kind of a crazy thing is like if you're looking at like average home prices, median sold prices in an area, that number can vary quite a bit depending on what website you're using. So I've stopped, looking at all those numbers, and what I've started doing is going straight to the source, which is the MLS. So what I've done is I've gone through and I've looked at some counties and I've looked at some lakes to give you guys this data. And essentially what I'm doing is I'm just using counties. So I'm using Blount County, I'm using Knox County, I'm using Roane County, I'm using Fort Loudon Lake, Wattsbar Lake, and Tellico Lake as my areas. Let's get started and I'll kind of share with you guys what I have found. So we looked at numbers from 2023 to 24, then from 24 to 25, and then last year, 25 to 26. So we're going to start off in Knox County, and what we'll see here is that in Knox County from 23 to 24, the median sold price was $367,500, and that was out of 6,880 listings. In 24 to 25, the median sold price jumped up to 390,000 out of 7,400 listings. And then in 25-26, or last year, the median sold price jumped up to 398,000 out of 7,408 listings. So what you see here, in these 3 years that we looked at is basically from 23-24 to 24-25, we actually had quite a big jump in inventory. I mean, almost actually a little over 500 additional homes sold, as well as the median sold price jumped up quite a bit as well. Now from 24 to 25 to 25-26, the jump wasn't nearly as much. I mean, it was 390 to 398, so you have about 8,000 there, and then the amount of inventory was about the exact same. So it seems like things kind of skyrocketed and then, kind of balanced out a little bit. Now let's look at Blount County. So 23 to 24, we had a median sales price of $375,000 out of 1,681 listings. In 24-25, the median sold price was $385,000 out of 1,918 listings. And then in 25-26, we had $390,000 out of 2,097 listings. So see here in Blount County, what you can tell is you can definitely see that development has stepped up, quite a bit, because year over year, we have a pretty good increase in inventory, as well as the price point is jumping up as well from 375 to 385 and then to 390. But you still see kind of like more of kind of a plateau this last year where it jumped from 385 to 390, because that's only $5,000. Now, when we look in the country town, Roane County, and again, this is not the only country town, it's just the one I picked. Median sales price from 23 to 24 was $295,000, and that was out of 743 listings. In 24 to 25, it was $315,000 out of 726 listings. And then in 25 to 26, it was $325,900 out of 823 listings. So in this one, you see that really the development or the inventory has really come up, right around 100 homes, which for the amount of homes, that's a good lick. last year, and the price point again has been, pretty steadily increasing. Of course, from 24, 25 to 25, 26, it slowed down, or it was slower than it was, from 23 and 24 to 24 and 25. And that might be confusing to follow, so you'll have to look at the graph to see what I'm saying here. But anyways, what this kind of tells me, these are the counties, and you can see a pretty, similar trend in that, the prices are continuing to go up, but they really kind of plateaued off, the last year. And I'm not gonna say they plateaued off, they're not climbing nearly as much as they were, which, indicates that it's a little bit more of a balanced market. And that's exactly what I was telling people last year, is I really felt like last year, where the interest rates, kind of hung up right around that 7% all year. I really felt like, last year was the first year where it wasn't like a hardcore seller's market, where, if you were a buyer, sometimes you were able to have those second showings that we hadn't seen. Not every single home was going multiple offers first day on the market. Again, it was a lot more balanced. Now, with that being said, homes were certainly still selling, multiple offers. Some were still going over asking price, but it wasn't nearly as crazy as it has been in the past. Now, when we look at the lake side of things, we're going to start off with Fort Loudon Lake. Again, I use Fort Loudon Lake because it's the most popular lake. The reason that it's the most popular lake is because Fort Loudon Lake is the lake that flows between the two biggest counties that we have around, which would be Knox County and Blount County. The lake actually splits the two in a lot of cases, right? So, Fort Loudon Lake is going to be, it's the highest price point. There's generally the most amount of inventory out there. And so let's look at 23, 24. The median sold price was $1,382,500, and that was out of 54 listings. The following year, 24 to 25, it jumped up to $1,395,000, and that was out of 62 listings. Now, the following year, it jumped up to $1,268,000, and that was out of 65 listings. So this one was really interesting because this is the first time that we actually see where a median sold price in the same area, year over year went down. The inventory is still climbing. You've got 54, 62, then 65. However, the median sold price, dropped $100K. Now, I don't know exactly why this is. I've got to do a little bit more digging to figure it out. I don't know if maybe there was, a bunch of condos on the lake that sold, and maybe that's what's kind of dropping that median price, or, or what. I was just going to do Fort Loudon Lake, and then I was like, after I saw these numbers, I was like, I've got to do more and see if this trend kind of, continues, if we continue to see this, in all of the other lake homes, and then maybe it's that higher price point that's coming down. As you're going to hear here, though, I did not actually find that. So in Watts Bar Lake, which again, Watts Bar Lake is going to be a little bit more rural. Watts Bar Lake starts in Lenoir City and goes all the way down to like the Dayton, 10 Mile Spring City area. And it eventually turns into the Chickamauga Lake. But anyways, Watts Bar Lake does have a lot more rural areas in it, so the price point's quite a bit lower. And you'll see that here in 23-24, the median sold price was $675,000 out of 71 listings. The following year, it jumped up to $689,850 out of 74 listings. And then the following year, it jumped up to $715,000, and that was out of 78 listings. So when you look at Watts Bar Lake, it's pretty much right on par with what we've seen in our counties, right? Where it's, the inventory is increasing as well as the price point. So then I said, well, heck, I got to do another one. So then we did Tellico Lake. Tellico Lake is probably the second most popular lake we have around here, mainly because you have a lot of communities around Tellico Lake, like Rarity Bay. Tellico Village obviously is a huge one. It's right down there. It meets Fort Loudon Lake to form Watts Bar Lake in Lenoir City. But it's very pretty. It's a beautiful lake. The water comes out of the Smokies, so it's a little bit cooler, a little bit cleaner. Let's start in 23-24. The median sold price was 1.3 million. That was out of 53 listings. The following year, it jumped up to 1,390,000 out of 55 listings. And then the following year, it jumped up to 1,425,000 out of 56 listings. So again, you see kind of that same trend. So again, I don't know exactly what's going on with the Fort Loudon Lake, but these are the numbers. So if you were interested in buying a lake home, these are the median sales prices, and this is the amount of inventory. Now, obviously, there's other counties that you can look in, there's other lakes that we can look in, but again, this would kind of give you like a general idea of what the pricing is going to be like. I will tell you this, what I believe that this year will hold as far as the real estate market goes is very similar. I think that it's going to be more of a balanced market. That's what we're seeing so far. I think that I think that I think the prices are going to increase, but I think again, it's going to be very similar to how it was last year where, maybe you've got a maybe $10,000, increase year over year. What I've seen so far, and, and I don't want to brag or anything, but I do sell quite a bit of real estate. I'm out there a ton. What I've seen so far this year is, I've had deals where they have gone multiple offer, when you've got like a really nice home that's priced right, those can still go multiple offer, but they're not going, 20, 30,000 over asking price like, they were back, in the pandemic era, that nightmare. I'm seeing some homes that, when they're priced a little higher or maybe when they need a little bit of work, those are tending to stick around a lot longer. And if you're looking around on some of these websites, you might notice that there's quite a bit of price reductions going on. And a lot of times that's what it is the market is, they're not really taking it anymore. You've got a lot more buyer pushback. So these homes aren't flying off the shelf until they come down to a reasonable price. Now you might look at these numbers and say, holy cow, that's insane. I'm right there with you. Listen, I've been in real estate long enough to where I've seen these prices like half of what they are. You know what I mean? It's wild. But I did look, according to the Google, the national median sales price is like 415,000. So technically, even our more expensive areas are still underneath that median sales price. So we're still, I guess, technically under the national average. So according to the Google, we are an affordable area. Now, a lot of people want to ask me about property taxes and listen, so here in Tennessee, you get reassessed every 4 years. We did not get reassessed last year, so property taxes have stayed the same. There shouldn't be anything that's really increasing. They still, according to, a lot of people that I talk to from all over the country, they still seem very affordable. Property taxes are typically really easy to find too. I mean, you can see them on any list, any decent listing site that's going to list homes will show you the property taxes. The biggest thing to note in our area is you might wonder why you might have a home in the same town. Say like you're looking in, say you're looking in Knoxville, right? You might have one home that's property taxes are double compared to what another home is, and they might seem very similar. And what you'll find is in our area, and I think that a lot of areas are this way, but in some areas, like if you're zoned for city, you're going to have city and county taxes, where if you're zoned for the county, you just have the county tax. So that's kind of where the difference is right there. And now following up that, the next question a lot of people have is, well, why are your taxes so much higher in the city? What all is included? So when you're in the city, a lot of times your trash service is included, the fire department is included, and sometimes you have a few other perks like brush pickup and things like that. Now, does it come out to be cheaper to live in the city? Absolutely not. Your trash services, if you live in the county, you have several that you can choose from typically, and it usually runs somewhere between like $25, $30 a month. Your fire department is somewhere between like $150 and $300 for the year. So when you really do the math, it's cheaper to live in the county, but there's nothing wrong with living in the city, and sometimes you get extra benefits. One of those specifically is like if you're wanting to be in like the Maryville City schools, you have to live in the city, right? So you kind of have to pay those taxes to get those schools. So yeah, if you guys have any other questions about anything, please give me a shout. And for the people who have reached out to me, thank you so much. It's been a huge blessing to me and my family. I really, really appreciate you guys. With that, I'll let y'all go. I'll catch you on the next one. Bye.